do this, do that, don't do this, do this, do that, and so on. And, so the first one, I apologize for that. I spent some time trying to correct it and say, gee, if what I'm saying here doesn't apply to what your situation is, I thought maybe I should change it or prove it in some way. And I tried to do it for a little while, then I realized I didn't even know what I was doing. All I really know is this stuff. So, just view this as suggestions, and some of the things I say, I'm sure that they won't apply to your specific case. Here's the basic summary. So of course the title is how to quit your software job and become a millionaire instead. And I assume that we're all here for the millionaire part, but I want to start with the quitting part. The basic plan is to quit your software job, start some company with a partner. It's going to be pretty important. Build up value while retaining the ownership of the company yourself. Okay, so you'll see why that happens here in a few slides. And then sell it to a larger company. Okay, and then you go back to step 1. You just keep doing this, because at the end of, when you're at step 5, you end up in a software job again. Okay, and then you just quit that and you do it again. Okay, so why do I start with the quitting part? It's actually a pretty important part. I think it's good to have a software job to begin with. Coming right out of school might be possible to do this, and one of the reasons is you might not know much about real software development, and I think this is less true today than it was when I started. I mean, I felt that I really didn't. When I was first dropped into a software development environment, there was a lot of stuff that I hadn't seen at all. And I think in computer science departments now, and certainly with the web and all this, shared development projects, and you see things like revision control, for example, that you really wouldn't see in a computer science department. So you could skip getting the job first, but it's still, I think it's quite useful to see a company from the inside before you try to go do something yourself. And then you want to have something. If the whole thing just blows up, well, it's nice to have a resume. Okay, so what type of company do we want to quit? And of course, what we really mean here is what type of company is useful to work inside of for the purposes of doing your own. I think the best thing is a profitable company that's small. Okay, it's not easy to find companies like this. Most companies that are just getting started have investment. They don't have revenue. They're not profitable. But there are companies out there that are profitable and are small. And if you can find one, if you ever find out about such a company, try to work for it. And it's a considerable research problem to figure out which companies these are, but it's useful. And then not 2 or 3 people, but 4 or 9, so you can kind of see how one would operate. If it's growing, that's great, and technology focused. Okay. Bad types. VC backed. Does everybody know what VC means? Venture capital. VC backed companies tend to have a reality distortion field. They spend too much money. They have artificial horizons on technology. You have to finish things by deadlines that are kind of external to the technology or the market itself. And then you can mistake the trappings of success, the having a nice office and so on, with actual success, which for me is profitability. This is the key, I think, to business, is to be profitable. And then the opposite side of this is gigantic companies. Usually, you're going to end up in some limited role there. You're not going to see a lot of stuff about startups in a huge company. Okay, so anyway, so we're enough about that. We've already quit, and we're ready to go on. So I went to go look and see some frequently asked questions about startups, and these were the 2 I found, and I have answers for them. And this is where we start entering the part where you should either believe me or don't believe me. So the first one is, how do you find a good idea, right? And the second is, how do you find the money? How do you pay salaries? How do you buy the computers? How do you get the office space? How do you do all those things? Okay, so how do you find a good idea? Don't even bother. Okay, don't bother looking for good ideas because it's too hard. It's too hard to think of good ideas. And in fact, the only way to know whether, I mean, if you have an idea, and the first thing you can do with it is you can try it. But sometimes when you try the idea, the next thing that happens is, you know, there's a loud explosion and your face is covered with ash and you know, your hair is sticking up in the air. And then you say, that wasn't such a good idea, right? But it's very hard. You can't tell whether, the only way I know to decide if something's a good idea is to, you know, try it. And so instead of looking for good ideas, we look for good people and good problems instead. And you know, these are much easier to find. Okay? How do you find investors? Don't bother to find investors. It's too hard, much too hard. If you don't have a track record already, unless you can go, you know, down the Sand Hill Road and say, that's the company I made $1 million for with this company, and this is the one I made, you know, unless you've already succeeded, you won't get a good deal on any startup. It's just not even worth trying. So don't put any effort into it. It's too hard, and by too expensive, I mean, even if you do manage to persuade someone that you've got a company or professional investors at least, that you've got a good idea, you'll end up giving a lot of the company away. And it's a bad time to be selling when you're just starting. And what you're doing, of course, in getting investment is you're selling stock. Okay, so what are we going to do? If we don't have ideas and we don't have investors, what are we going to do? Okay, so so now we have to worry about, are we going to live at all? Are we going to die? And so you try to figure out a way to survive with no income. Okay, and I used to think this number was 12 months. And I always, whenever we start something, we say the number is 12 months. Yeah, 12 months, forget it. We're going to just quit. But then it always seems to drag out to 18 months, you know, even 24 months. So we just say up front, okay, it's 18 to 24 months. How much money do you need? I put the 15K into red. I don't know how much money it really takes. You got to have a computer. I think it's very useful. You got to have computers to write software, obviously, and you need. And I think it's really useful to have a PBX. Do people know what a PBX is? A PBX is a little piece of software or a box that when you call, it says, you know, welcome to Rabbit Technologies for 1, press sales for 2, press technical support for 3. You know, you can rent these things from for fairly cheaply, and it gives a very professional feel. Whenever anyone calls, you know, even if it's just 2 people, they get the impression that this, hey man, I'm talking to Rabbit Technologies here, right? And, you know, okay, so finally, I need to make sure I get through this. Okay, so, and in the office, I also put in red because it's not clear you need an office. The reason I like to have an office is it gives you a very physical thing to look at and say, is this business going anywhere, right? Because when you first get an office, you move all your stuff in, you move your computers in, and what happens after that? I mean, do we have customers visiting us? Are we getting more computers? Are we hiring people? The office is sort of the reification, if you know what that means. It means to make real. It makes real the abstraction of the company. And you know, if the office is getting bigger, we're getting bigger. If people are coming to the office, the company is doing stuff. As long as you don't have the office, you can have this. It's hard to tell sometimes. Are you making progress or not? You know, you got the guy in Helsinki or whatever. And finally, you need a partner. So let's go on. Okay, so we're going to have 2 people to start off. One is going to be a technical wizard. Going to be a very good technical person. And the other person is going to be a sales or marketing person. Okay? The wizard is going to sit on a desk and build some really great software for a very specific problem in about 18 to 24 months. And so the other 2 people, you want to be one of these 2 people, almost. Let's go. So you want to figure out that. And then you need a salesperson, and the best salesperson is gregarious, cheerful, enthusiastic, and so on. And I think these things are equally rare, actually. You know, there are a lot of good developers, and then there are people that are really, really good developers. And they're as equally rare as the people that can walk into a room with nothing and sell it. Okay, and these are the people that you really want. Remember, we're not looking for ideas, we're looking for people. Okay, and we're looking for really good people. And we're looking for it all the time. Okay, what if you're both? What if you're both a technical wizard and You don't need this talk at all. You need to be giving the billionaire talk instead. I mean, I really think these some of the most successful companies are exactly the ones where the person who started it had both those attributes. But here's the better question, and this applies to all of us, really, certainly to me. What if you're neither? Okay. What if you're not a technical wizard and you're not a sales guru? Okay. I was telling people about that I was giving this talk who I'd worked with before, and I said, I'm going to talk about the people, and I told them what I'm about to say, and I'll say now is that, well, if you're not going to be either person, if you're not going to be the programmer or you're going to be the sales guy, yeah, it's still okay. You can still do it. But the other person needs to be really, really good. Okay? So again, we come back to finding this really good other person, right? And he said, there's some joke. I knew exactly what you meant. You thought, that's easy for you to say because you're always the guy that's not any good. And that's true. I mean, it's really true. I don't know. It really does come down to people, I think. Anyway. Okay, so once you have the two people, you create an S corporation. You split the stock 50-50 between the two people. Not 49. Nobody says, well, I think I'm bringing the real assets to the table. No, nothing like that, right? Because if you're going to do something like this, it's a pretty desperate activity, really, at its core. You're talking about not making money. You're talking about a lot of hard work, and really, people they're just wired to not consider themselves fairly treated in such a situation unless they own half of it. Okay, so just forget about that. Split it 50-50. Okay. Make sure you're both fully committed. Are you really going to work on it? And then you own it. Okay, you're going to make it successful. Okay, now we got to go and talk about the problem stuff. How to find a problem. Well, just think of it in terms of constraints. What do you know about? What does the wizard know about the salesperson? Who does he know? Very practically, who can he call on the phone and talk to today? And stay within bounds of things you find interesting, because you're going to be working on this stuff for quite a while. And try to stay close to what you know already in general. Okay, so now this is probably the hardest part. How do you find a problem? The thing you're going to do. And I can't tell you what, all I can try to describe are some of the things that seem to be good indicators of good problems. So one of the nicest things is if you have some kind of inside knowledge about a particular problem, like if you maybe know somebody who works at Intel, and they say, we got this huge problem with X, Y, and Z, that's probably the best possible thing that can happen to you. To just hear about a problem that others don't know about. A lot of times people, remember what we're building here is a company that we're trying to sell to a larger one. So it's useful to solve the problems of big companies. And a lot of times it's just the lack of appropriate tools. So look for situations like that. Then there's paradoxical situations. There are a lot of opportunities to sell to companies what they sell to other people. And you would almost rule this out. Why would I sell security software to Benson, for example? That's one of the ones I was involved in. Sometimes you just meet somebody who says, I got a huge problem, I'm looking for people, please, could you help me? That's perfect. Impossible things, it's always good to revisit all things and say if they've already been solved, have they really been solved, could you do it better? Things that have barriers to entry are also really good. Vague problems are the bad ones. Feel free to ask questions if you want any time here. Bad problems, they're vague. Computers are too hard to use. Or if you can't say if you can't say who would pay for a problem. There's no good sushi on the moon. Well, nobody will pay. I mean, it's certainly true. It's not clear it's even a problem. And if we do want to solve it, we can't say who would pay anyway. This next one is kind of a reminder to myself because I've gotten involved in healthcare stuff more than once, both times unsuccessfully. And it both came down to we couldn't say who would pay. Everyone agrees that healthcare software, even the whole healthcare system, is really broken, and the software is broken too. But you can't figure out who's going to pay to fix it. So of course, technobabble is not a problem. I mean, stringing together a bunch of phrases is not a problem. And then I think bad problems are also ones that everyone already knows about and is reading about in the paper. I just think that those things get a lot of attention already, and we want to pick something else. Okay, so now the rest of this is about just bootstrapping. How do you get a company going? And then I'll stop, and if there are questions, we can talk. Okay, so just some general principles about bootstrapping. Just to get to know a lot of people, and try to extend your sphere of people that you know all the time. Keep track of what people are doing, ask them questions, go to trade shows, listen to what people say, what they're doing, and try to understand, and don't be afraid to look very stupid, because you're prospecting. You don't know, you're trying to figure out what you want to do. And people love to talk about what they do. And if you ask them questions, they will tell you. And it's nothing better than that to find out what's going on. And I think in computer science, a lot of people tend to, usually, what's the next thing I'm going to do? What's the next thing I'm going to type myself? And so you can gain a lot by being more sociable. We tend to be a very sociable group. And just be out there. People are always happy. And this is probably, the best, really great thing. Okay, so now just the rest of this is just kind of a hodgepodge of points about software and bootstrapping. So, number one, software is licensed and not sold. So when when you download something from the internet and it says, please accept, and you see this big, well, I'm going to do what you do, I just click accept. I never read this stuff, right? And there's no reason to read it. I just say click yes, okay. But this blah, 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 inside all those software licensing and user agreements, it's actually very important. And it's not important in the context of just putting some runtime on your PC. But when you're building up a company from nothing, it's very important so IP is the term that's used to refer to intellectual property or rights to software, rights to ideas, and so on. Okay, so
yes? Why do you license instead of sell software?
Well, if you sell something to someone, then it's very hard to place a restriction on an object that is sold to someone. I think it has to do with legal terminology. So if Microsoft were to sell me Windows, then I could just say, hey, I bought Windows. Yeah, I'm selling Windows. I bought Windows, right? You could make all kinds of copies and stuff. So in terms of legal framework, everything is always phrased in terms of a license agreement. You say, you have a license to do this, okay? So it's worthwhile to take a look at, unfortunately, all of this is very, very boring, right? Reading about software licensing is, it's just not a really thrilling thing to do, but it's critical to building up value in a software company. So to bootstrap yourself, the way to do it is to find a consulting project, okay? So what does it mean to be a consultant? It means you're doing work for a company. They will take ownership of the software you write. So if you are a consultant to a software company, you'll sign a contract that says everything you do, you're giving it to us. Okay, that's their default agreement, right? But what you say instead is, gee, come on, this is Rabbit technology, right? We are ourselves developing technology for X, Y, and Z, and we would like to use X, Y, and Z in this project. But of course, we're Rabbit Technology. We own X, Y, and Z. Okay? And it doesn't have to be an adversarial thing at all, but what you have to do is kick out the default consulting contract, right? Because if you go to Sun or Intel or whatever, they'll say, great, you're a consultant. Welcome aboard, right? Sign this thing. They own everything, okay? And you have to say, no, we have certain things that we'd like to bring to the table. We own them. Right? And these things don't have to be adversarial at all. You just lay all the cards on the table. Say, look, if you're just getting started, then you say, we just got started. We don't have any. But after the first project, you've done some work, and then you say, look, we have this. We'd like to use it. We'll give you guys the license. You can do it. You can resell it. But maybe you want to give something back to us. You could get rights. We could get rights to use your stuff. we can have a right to resell your stuff. And so you want to get to a point where you're negotiating these kind of things so that the outcome of consulting is not just hand over the work, look for the next consulting thing, okay? And then after you get the customer's name, or after you've done it for a customer, you also want to make sure you get the right to use their name. Some companies that you do consulting for don't want you to say that you did consulting for them. And you want to make sure that you cover that one. That's actually burned me more than once. Okay, how to know you're on the right track. So the picture I'm trying to paint here is starting with nothing, getting a consulting contract because you knew somebody, and trying to build up from there. So now, on this slide, I'm trying to identify a critical stage, in my opinion, that says we're on the right track and this company's going somewhere, okay? Okay, so what have we done? If you can get all 5 of these things going, you've got a company. And you've got something that is really, I think that once you reach this point, it's really just executing. I mean, you have a kind of a winning position, if you will. Okay, so you found one company that will pay you for a solution. You've got a contract and a deadline obligating you to deliver it on some time frame, and you're making money because they're paying you via consulting contract. Number 3, or the third one is you're able to say to people very precisely what you're doing. You're no longer saying, you know, gee, we're really interested in distributed systems or networking. You're saying, no, we're doing this, and I'll give you some examples of what this is. And you've sort of aligned the technical effort with the marketing effort. The marketing person knows what you're doing and is out there trying to sell it, and people are actually calling you to find out about it. So once you have all 3, like you can achieve all these things, you've got a company that is going somewhere. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot more that could be said, but I'll just leave it there. Okay, so here are some examples. You talk about having no ideas. I mean, there's only one company here that had any idea, really. That's the second. But these are 4 companies I've been involved in. And 3 of them, all we did was implement a spec. Okay, we just took a spec and implemented. But, you know, we kept the rights to the software. It's basic, very simple, not anything too fancy. And it doesn't matter whether, I just wrote down, these are just statements of what the company was doing. They say, what are you guys doing? We have toolkits for networking. We have libraries for IC manufacturing. We've got toolkits for security stuff, and then another security company. And so, you know, when you talk about needing to find an idea, there's a lot of stuff out there, a lot of visions for software and how it should work that are not realized, and you know, you could be the one that actually comes up with it. Okay, comes up with an implementation. So here are some more. All these points are open to debate and improvement and so on. I'm going to continue in my dogmatic mode here. What's the market? Okay, so these are just some principles. We're not going to give anything away for free in this company. The reason we don't give anything away for free is we can't tell who our customers are, and remember, our customers are the ones who are paying us so that we can keep this thing going. And if we give stuff away for free, we never know who are our customers. Okay, remember, customer is the person that pays us. And this is not to say that giving stuff away is bad. I'm not, I'm just talking about how to get a software company going. It's very important to qualify the customer, figure out who are the people who will pay to see something realized. You can hedge on this. You can give stuff away for free, but never give anything absolutely away for free. At least get them to write a check for $10. It'd be better if it's $2,000, but get someone to write a PO to get reimbursed so that you're in the chain. You have contact outside the technical part of the company. Because what's happening on the other side, you have the startup, the technical person's coming and saying, oh, there's a library for the thing I need, I want to use this thing. If they can just get it for free without calling you, they'll do it. They'll never call you, right? If they have to pay $10, they might call you. If they see it costs $1,000, they will certainly call you or they'll go away. And it's a benefit if they go away, if there's no possibility of repaying. Remember, we don't have any money here. We have to get some money. We have to sell stuff. So the other consequence of this is we've got to sell stuff that costs quite a bit because we have to in order to survive. It's just too hard unless you come up with something like WinZip, or something where you literally just see the $10 checks and $25 checks coming in daily in large numbers. You won't get a company bootstrapped on low-cost software. It's much better to charge more. And then finally, there's a lot of talk about marketing and so on, and I'm going to make the claim that a market of 1 will be enough for us to succeed. So if we have high-cost software, we don't give it away, and we persuade people to buy it, we have done something very good for our company. Okay, okay, and it's the ant metaphor. If there's one company out there that will buy stuff and write you a check, there are others. Believe me, there's always others. So, and this is actually this is a considerable pain point sticking with this, because people want to get your stuff. If you have anything, they want to see your software, and you just have to keep saying, no, we don't. This is not something we'll do. Okay, so you get used to a lot of people telling you that you're wrong, and that you're not going to survive. They'll tell you, IBM and HP, they already do this, right? They've already announced support. Why won't you just give me a demo copy? We talked about that. How are you going to survive? This market's not big enough. And who else are you selling this to? They're trying to figure out what you're doing. And what you're doing is you're trying to get ahead of a technology curve in a very specific area. They'll ask you, well, who are your investors? The answer is, we haven't needed any. This is a very good answer to give to people. It creates a lot of mystery. Even if you don't have any customers, you say, we haven't needed any. Right? Okay? Then they want to know who are your customers, and of course it's best to say, well, my customers are these companies, and you can please call them. But if you can't say that yet, if you're just getting started, then you have to say companies who do this. And then the fallback is we don't reveal the information. But just never say we don't have any customers. Just don't say that. I mean, on your deathbed, you can say, oh, we have no customers. Never say it. Okay. You can admit it then. And then this other one I don't know how to handle really. It's asked a lot. And people put a lot of weight. How big are you? How many people are in the company? And there's a lot of people out there that will just say, look, this is just thing, and Bob, there's no way we're going to build our, nano simulator on top of this stuff, right? Because these guys could go away. And so it's a difficult question to answer. I think the answer is to be honest and just say it. I think that's the real answer, but I will confess to having exaggerated. I don't think I've ever exaggerated the two number, but I've applied various multipliers to larger companies. Like there were 6 people, they were in fact 9 people. And I don't even think I really got much out of it. But just somehow this question, I just don't know what to say in response to it. I think honesty is the best policy. Here we are in the academic setting. We shouldn't be, or I shouldn't be saying anything else, I suppose. Anyway, that's about all I have to say on the subject. I don't know how much time we have.
You got plenty of time.
Okay.
As much as you want.
Okay. So 4 years go by, and you're just continue bootstrapping, right? The basic operation here is get a consulting contract, fold something back into your software, continue making it into a product, making it more product-like, never dropping your prices, and eventually, lo and behold, you will have a profitable, growing company. And this is a very considerable accomplishment. I see all the people that have the nice offices and they have the, Sigma Partners, venture capital. All those companies are unprofitable, right? But your company isn't. And when they go to sell their company, they have problems because they've got all these investors who want to see big returns, whereas you own all of this thing because you never took any money. And so you can take even a small deal, right? $1 million it's a minuscule software deal, but if you took no money, you're already doing really well, okay? I mean, nobody's going to buy any software company for less than $1 million. If there are 3 people, and it splits 30, 30, 30, and you spend 4 years, you reach getting, $330K, okay? Whatever it is. So and don't sell yourself short. Most acquisitions or companies like this, they're more like in the 10 or 20 million range. that's it. Oh, and this thing is alive and well. This is an email. This is an email. Trust Jennings. I don't know if you guys have web stuff? Does anyone have a laptop now? I don't know if this company's website is still up, but as of March 29th, there was a trustjennings.com website. It was acquired by HP. There were 10 people in the company, no outside investment, and this is just an email that was sent from an HP guy saying that, this company was acquired on the 27th of this year. And I include this because I was literally doing this presentation when I got this mail. And so, all of the assets and liabilities are now part of HP, and so, the people in this company, this is not a company that I was involved in very much. I'm not, working at HP. But my friend who, several of the companies I did mention, he and I started together. And so he's working for HP now. Anyway, so this is just Emerson. You can read that if you want. The last part is the same. You can't really know if you like this until you try it. You can always try it for a while, and then if you really don't like it, you can not do it. But welcome any questions. Yeah.
Beyond the if you're a technical person, beyond the technical excellence, what is the characteristic of a startup person?
Yeah, I don't actually know. I know that there's a lot of stuff on the web about that. What is the emotional type of a risk taker and so on. I actually hate risk. I prefer people who like sure things, and I tend to pick things, minimize risk. And one of the people for that semiconductor company, I have a friend who we talked about there at lunch. He put it very well. Somebody said, "How did you do this? How did you start this thing?" And he said, "What about the risk?" And he said, what he said was, and this was on TV, so I can actually show you. He said, "There was no risk. There was only uncertainty." Okay, so the risk is not really. What is the risk, right? A risk is, when there's a minefield and you've got to run across the minefield. That's risk, right? But what you have in a software company is uncertainty. You don't know where your next meal is coming from. You don't know if anyone's going to buy this stuff. And I think there are people that don't like uncertainty. They like to know, look, I'm going to go to work, I'm going to do this job, and this is what I do, okay? There's a lot of uncertainty in this stuff. You honestly, when you start, you don't even know what you're doing. You have no idea where the thing is going to go. And some people, this is just unacceptable. So, yeah. Sure.
I've seen some like early stage startups get acquired.
Yeah.
And what seems to be almost just a, like the company that's doing the acquiring just wants the people.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know if you have any experience or any comments on that.
I don't. It sounds great. It sounds like a great time to be doing stuff.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah. I read that too. That Google, Google is acquiring people for just to keep some of the people involved, and that's great. That's favorable news for people who are doing startups. Maybe you don't have to do any of this hard stuff. You can just. And also the thing I also read was that they're trying to beat out venture people, or companies that look good. They're trying to buy them before they get any venture money because they figure they have to buy it anyway. They might as well get it before the venture money comes in.
Sure. I know there's a company, I don't know whether it's Facebook or it's High Five, one of them. The owner was offered $750 million. And he turned it down. He said he wanted $2 billion or something like that. At that point, how do you know whether, okay, I'm going to take this 750? Because to me right now, that seems like a lot of money. He turned that down and said he wanted $2 billion. I mean, how do you decide?
I don't know. If you're a person like me who's not anywhere close to either of the numbers you said, I think it's just, there are questions of scale involved. If you're already Bill Gates, it's easy to walk away from a $790 million deal. But if you're the guy who started this thing, he sounds pretty dumb. Take the 700. You're just trying to move yourself up you know, to some new situation. So, but there is another side to that though, which is that in order to get the top dollar, you know, for anything, you got to be willing to walk. And you know, people will try to lowball, and you do have to be able to, you know, even when it is something that would be quite nice to have. You know, it's like poker. You know, you don't want to be bluffed out of, you know, something. Yeah, that sounds like a very good thing. I think you made a mistake. Unless, you know, any others? Sure.
Can you describe a little bit more your experience after your PhD entering the software? One of the first, I mean, what were your expectations?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I was a math major as an undergrad, and I hadn't really taken any computer science courses at all. But I got on this computer programming team, and then for some reason, it was not me, we had a really good team, and we won this national or ACM programming contest, and so I parlayed that into admission into Stanford, where they almost kicked me out because I didn't know anything. I told Terence this, anyway, I managed to survive, and then I came out with a PhD from Stanford, and the natural thing to do was to get an academic job, but I never really was an I don't think I'm really an academic kind of person. And so I went to go get a job, and the job I got was a company right across the street, which at that time was called Technicron Software Systems, and I was just very lucky in that it had these attributes of a company that was growing and very successful, did Wall Street software. It's called TIBCO now, you know, TIBCO. But at that time it was called Technicron Software Systems. So I worked there, and I absolutely hated it. I only worked there 14 weeks, but I hated it because, and the reason I hated it was I'm not a very good employee. I'm just not very good at following orders, really. And so we just quit. So three of us from that company left and started a networking company to do what they were doing better. So then we developed some software, and then they came back, and we started taking their customers back, and then they called us in and threatened to sue us. And we had a long meeting, and we agreed that we wouldn't sell to particular customers, and then we were expecting, and then we left, and we were expecting to, you know, be sued off the face of the earth, but it never happened. So we lived to do. They never sued. We never actually followed through on suing us. And of course, we were asking things. We hadn't taken any from them, but so yeah. So that was the first one, and that was a networking company, and it was bought by Visogenic. It was I don't know, how many people know what an orb is nowadays?
Object request broker.
Obviously nobody, but see, 10 years ago, this was the thing for next generation web. It's sort of.
They now call it SOAP, but it's text-based.
Yeah, SOAP is probably the closest thing, and it's still sold. And this product software is still sold by Borland under the name VisiBroker. Yeah, and then and then just other ones that were started in a similar, just kind of by chance. It was really driven by the people and particular opportunities, not technology really. People and problems. That's why. Yes.
Are there any things you think we might do within a computer science department to help students be in a position to do this when they get on the outside?
Well, from what I see, I think it's looking really good. I mean, as I said, it seems like what's being done, at least what Terence was showing me, stuff that's already used in industry quite a bit. I mean, this stuff certainly, and I don't know. I'm not much of an educator, really. I think the gap in between what goes on in industry and what is going on in computer science departments is maybe getting, you know, a little bit less. But yeah, I don't know if there's anything specific. I would say I don't really believe there's that much risk in this. I mean, what is the downside of this thing, honestly? The downside is you spent 18 months, you missed a year's salary, but if you didn't starve to death, you are stronger. So, you know, try to think, you know, these are all personal things. How can you create the situation where you can do this? But, shoot, I mean, you know, I think it's worth a shot. You know, it's other fact, I mean, all the different things, you know, that have gone on from, you know, incredibly fun things to incredibly painful things. Like you know, I was reading about this eBay, or just a brief thing about one of the eBay founders, and he has a website, and he said, not eBay, PayPal, and he said, you know, my time at PayPal was some kind of very lyrical paragraph. My time in the early days of PayPal were the most golden times of my life. You know, I'll never see anything better than, you know, those days in the dingy PayPal office where we were first writing the PayPal software. You know, that's how this stuff is. I mean, it's a very intense thing. It's like training for the Olympics. You know, you're out in your own little office and you're working like a dog. And if it becomes successful, it's very gratifying. So, yeah, I mean, to me, that's the main reason to do this. It's not really the money. It's it just beats working on, you know, software day to day and a job, I think, in terms of, you know, fun and experiences and so on. In my opinion. Yes.
You made the point that it's tough to bootstrap when selling low-cost software.
Right.
But what about the case where the problem you're encountering is a consumer-facing problem, where you'd be selling at most, you know, software to individuals and, you know, like the hundreds at the most? Do you have any advice for that kind of situation?
It's just got to be. I mean, I've never done one like that, so I don't know. I really don't know. All I know is, you know, you do the math. You got to get a lot of sales if you want to bootstrap it all. And sometimes some of those sales, you know, they come. I mean, for user software, like, you know, something that's easily downloaded, then yeah, you don't have a big investment in supporting it, maybe. But since I've never really done one like that, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure it's possible to be very successful with it. I'm trying to think of a good example of one. WinZip is a good one. What's another good company that sells cheap user-based software?
I'm thinking primarily of web-based, like web application businesses, where the distribution costs are pretty low and
right.
support costs can scale pretty well.
I think I have no doubt that it can be done, and that I think at the end of the day, you want to get out of it. You know, you don't want to spend your life being the WinZip guy, unless the WinZip guy is getting all the checks from, you know. And I think it's easy to end up in a situation where you see some revenue and you know, kind of continue, and never really get an acquirer because there's not enough value in it. But that's the reason why I wouldn't do it. But again, I mean, I have my biases. And it depends on the situation, I'm sure.
What role do you see, like, you know, you hear about these like open source business models now. It always strikes me as, what about free and business model go together?
Yeah.
What do you think about all that?
Okay. I mean, I think it's great, and I use this stuff, and I'd be the last one to say that free software is bad, although I think that's what I did, actually. I think I said that. I said it's bad. No, it's what you can do with this stuff is support it. You know, do you know Cygnus Solutions? That's a great company. What happened to it? It was acquired by someone.
By Red Hat.
By Red Hat, okay. Well, what you can do is you can take all this free software, if it's really being adopted, that's another way to go. This actually, what you can do is you can say, look, if you're using this software, we support it. That's all Cygnus did.
Right.
And
Michael Tiemann, who's now CTO of Red Hat, asked me to come manage one of his projects.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I can't see myself managing GNU software for a living.
Yeah. He
made a lot of money doing that.
Yeah, that was a very successful company. So what Cygnus Solution did is they took all this free software, like Cygwin, for example, which is a thing that will run a Unix shell kind of on a Windows box and a lot of other stuff, and they started supporting it. But if you look at their pricing, it's expensive, right? I mean, they say, you work for PG&E, you want Cygnus? Well, $20,000 a year. Every year you pay us this. And that fits the model perfectly. You know, it's a large company and they're paying, and then they got, yeah, I would say that company was, I don't know much about the early days of the founding, but I'd be very surprised if it wasn't pretty much as I described it. I don't think they took much money, you know.
That was my first lesson in business from Michael Tiemann. I said, dude, how do you get a company like Boeing to give you like $100,000 a year?
You ask, yeah.
And he said,
Yeah.
he said, simple. You explain to them that it'd be more expensive to do it themselves.
Yeah, and it's true. It's beautiful, and we have to do that. Yeah. Yes, what would be a good candidate for that nowadays? What could we support? Web services software or something?
Well, you know, like, it's weird, you know, people are starting to give away, you know, like Sun is now putting Linux on their boxes, and, you know, IBM's getting the Linux thing, and, you know, it's weird how it's kind of like part of stuff.
Right.
But, I don't know, I'm starting to read about these so-called open source business models, and I just don't understand how you're going purely on that, except for something like Sigma.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I think it's a great thing. You know, I mean, if it's possible to.
So what was your most successful startup?
Well, it depends on what you measure it by.
Cash.
Cash. Cash was by far was the VeriSign thing because yeah, I mean that was just very lucky timing. You know, that acquisition went through on December 21st, 1999. I got stock on March 1st, and the tech. And,
month later.
And 10 days later is when this tech, you know.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was very lucky. Yeah. I mean, if you do it, I mean, that's the other thing, is that if you do this for 15 years, is it 15 years, 10 years, something like 15 years, you'll get lucky. If you just keep doing this, you cannot help but have a big success. Just keep doing it. I mean, the first company I started, I didn't do that well. I mean, the other founders made a lot of money. I sold out of it because I thought, it's a long story. Made some very poor judgments. I mean, what really happened was I saw the first Mosaic browser and I thought, what? You know, our stuff is just so pointless. You know, once I saw the first web browser, I didn't realize that we still had a lot of value. And I kind of burned out on it, and so I sold, you know, stock and got out of it.
What effect has this had, you know, like startup-wise? Has it on you personally? Were you married before you started startups, or are you getting married during, or?
I was just out of grad school and just getting married when we did the first one, and then had, you know, 2 kids, you know, while we were doing the other ones. Yeah, so pretty busy. You know, and I think the hardest part, like today I was reading about debt, student debt, right? People going to school and coming out with, you know, huge debt. And I was actually in reading that when I read that, I thought, you know, is this really going to work for anybody? You know, if you come out of school with a lot of debt, you know, you've got the administration or whoever it is who chases you down wanting you to pay down your debt. And to me, that's very regrettable. It's not regrettable for people who are forced to incur the debt. What it says is we should be spending more on education. But yeah, I was even thinking, you know, maybe there's a secondary market there where you could offer to pay down people's debt. You know, they could say, look, you got a lot of debt, but we also think you're pretty good at software, so we're going to pay your debt, and then you come work for us. You know,
It's an indentured service.
Yeah, indentured service. Yeah. Yeah, because it's very limiting. If you have to pay, you know, it's like having a mortgage, right? It's hard to do this if you have a family and a mortgage and so on. It's hard to do this. It's hard to take 18 months because you get all these expenses going. You're used to a paycheck and so on. Yeah, it's hard to do.
In your experience, what are the most important things or decisions that you would do that differently if you had to do them again?
Okay, yeah, that's good. Okay, so that's a really good question. The question is, what would I do differently? Okay, these companies, I describe what I've been involved in, and I didn't go into other possibilities. And one other possibility that's very good is once you get a profitable company, you get investment, right? And then you build it up even bigger, right? And I've never done it. I've never taken any venture money at all. You know, instead we just always dished the company and then did another one. But we missed a big opportunity, more than once that way. I think, you know, because another company in the same category did better. You know, in the end, for the founders, they did better. But what happens for me from a personal level is you start one of these things and it's slow growing. It doesn't go very fast. You know, you have 18 months where it's only 2 people, so it's not very fast moving. But by the time you get to where you can sell it, it's already been 4 years and you're still working on, you know, the damn library for networking or whatever it is. And, you know, I just get bored. And then usually this process of, you know, getting more investment and growing it even bigger involves another commitment to spend another 6 years, you know, working on this stuff. And it's a cushier role, but it's not one that, as I said, I don't do very well in that situation of, you know, being in a company and having to show up and everything. So, yeah. But yeah, in terms of, but we probably would have, you know, I should rethink that.
So you're on the developer side of the partnership. Have you worked with like multiple salesman partners, or always the same person?
No, they're when I mean salesman, I mean a co-founder of the company whose role is to sell the stuff. So you're asking about other people who might sell the stuff? Or?
Well, so just out of the 2 people in the partnership,
yeah.
have you always been the one on the technical?
Have I always been? Which person have I? I've always been. I mean, I've always been the junior person. I've always recruited the person who's better. And so I played both roles because I can do both. I can, like at VeriSign, I had a technical evangelist role. You know, I get up and I give talks about how wonderful VeriSign technical. So I like giving talks and so on. And I'm an okay developer, but I mean, I know my limitations. And so, you know, one of the reasons I was, you know, kind of kicked out of the first company is people woke up and they realized I wasn't really good. I mean, I really think that's the honest appraisal of what happened. So you got to be sort of good, but I mean, it's more important to find that really good person to be the other person. And then you're so lucky to be working with them. You know? Yeah, about half and half, I say. I've written a lot of medium quality software.
So are you currently investing? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sure. No, go ahead.
Is it possible to do all this without committing to 3 hours a month for a year and a half or 2, or can you pull it off with, say, you know, working only 200 hours a month, 250?
Where the other part you're doing something else, like at another job or something?
Like maybe going out for a beer every once in a while.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. You know, every time I've done it, it has led to that just intense working thing, and there was no, you know, everybody started working really, really hard at some point, to the point where it becomes a sickness of people working too hard. And there's a point at which that becomes very bad. So I don't know, you know, but it just, it seems to always lead to that, where you're working really, really, really hard. And everyone is like feeling like they need to come earlier than the other person. And the real pathology is when everyone, this is when you know it's really getting bad, is you start showing up to work in a tie. Which is something that I noticed we started doing in the company just because, you know, we had gotten to the point where everyone was working so hard and wanted to make sure that everyone knew that they took this very seriously. We actually started dressing up, you know, like, this is kind of weird to look back at it, but it didn't happen. So.
Do you think a lot of people burn out?
I did. I certainly did. I certainly burned out on that first one I mentioned, and I think it does happen. You know, it happens a lot. It's nothing to be, you know, ashamed of. I hope it isn't. Otherwise, I wouldn't say it. But yeah, you know, there's got to be some way to avoid that because it's not healthy.
Any other questions for Thane? All right, well, thanks very much, Thane, for coming.
A little twisty. Do you like the twisty thing?
Okay, for our class, we'll reconvene in 5 minutes over in our usual room for 2 presentations.
And I guess my software engineering students can leave. And
Are you going?
see you guys on Thursday.
Are you going?
Hi. Hi, how's it going? Yeah, sorry.